ready to shatter a myth. Today, we're talking about one of the most fantasized about and poorly understood figures in history, the kunoichi, the female ninja. When you hear that word, I know exactly what comes to mind. An assassin, with cat-like reflexes, dressed in a skin-tight black suit, defying gravity, leaping between rooftops with a katana on her back and throwing shurikens with pinpoint accuracy. It's the image sold to us by anime, movies, and video games. A lethal fantasy, a femme fatale of feudal Japan. Well, forget all of that. Take that image, crumple it up, and throw it in the trash, because the reality is infinitely more subtle, more intelligent, and frankly, much more dangerous. The real kunoichi wasn't a comic book superhero. She was a spy, a master of deception, a combat psychologist whose battlefield wasn't the front line, but the minds of her enemies. And her most powerful weapon, her most lethal and above all most intimate weapon, it wasn't the poison on her lips or the dagger hidden in her clothes. It was something she carried with her everywhere, something no one could take from her, and something her enemies, in their arrogance, never saw coming. So, tune out the noise of the world. Prepare for a dose of historical truth, raw and unfiltered, and join me in the shadows of feudal Japan. We're going to discover the kunoichi's best-kept secret before we infiltrate the past. If you're into this kind of unfiltered history, smash that like button so the algorithm knows that uncomfortable truths are appreciated here. And tell me in the comments, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of a female ninja? I want to see how many myths we can bust today. To understand the true power of the kunoichi, we have to detonate 3 reality bombs that will pulverize the Hollywood image. Reality bomb number 1. They didn't dress like ninjas. Sounds crazy, right? But it's the plain truth. The classic tight black suit, the shinobi shozoku, is largely an invention of 17th century kabuki theater. On stage, stagehands dressed in black to remain invisible to the audience. When a ninja character appeared, they used the same visual convention. A real kunoichi would never have worn something like that. Why? Because her job wasn't to look cool and mysterious. Her job was to be invisible. And there is nothing more visible than a woman in a black lycra suit in the middle of a feudal castle. Her true uniform was normality. Her disguises were those of a servant, a maiden, a traveling Buddhist nun, bhikkhuni, a wandering performer, a fortune teller, a geisha. She blended into the environment. Her goal was for you to see her and instantly ignore her. She was the woman who served your tea, the one sweeping the hallway, the one playing the shamisen in the corner. She was background noise, a supporting character in everyone's life. And from that position, nobody saw her. But she saw everything. Her invisibility was her first line of attack. Reality bomb number 2. Her most lethal weapons were everyday objects. Yes, of course they knew how to use swords and knives, but pulling out a dagger in the middle of a feudal lord's palace is a death sentence. Their best weapons were the ones they could carry in plain sight, without raising the slightest suspicion. Think about the Kanzashi, that elaborate hairpin. To a samurai, it was a harmless feminine ornament. To a kunoichi, it was a sharpened steel spike, perfect for attacking the jugular or a pressure point. It could be hollowed out to hold poison or blinding powder. It was a deadly weapon, hidden in plain sight in her hairstyle. A paper fan could have its ribs made of metal, sharpened like blades. An umbrella could conceal a blowgun with poisoned darts. Even her fingernails, often sharpened and hardened, could be coated with deadly toxins or excrement to cause lethal infections with a simple scratch. The nekote, small metal claws that fit over the fingers, could be easily hidden and were devastating in close combat. The lesson here is brutally simple. Everything you saw on a kunoichi was either a lie or a weapon, or both. Reality bomb number 3. Her primary mission was not assassination. Assassination is noisy. Assassination leaves a body. Assassination sparks investigations and reprisals. For an organization operating in the shadows, assassination was a failure, a last resort option. The real currency in feudal Japan wasn't a general's life. It was information. How many soldiers does the rival clan have? What are the castle's defenses? Who are the traitors at court? What is the supply route? That information was worth more than 1,000 swords. The kunoichi's primary mission was espionage, infiltration, and sabotage. Her value wasn't in how many lives she took, but in how many secrets she obtained. She was an intelligence agent, not a hitman. And to get those secrets, she needed to get close to the source. She needed the most powerful and paranoid men in the country to lower their guard. And that, finally, brings us to her ultimate weapon. The weapon that Hollywood sensed, but never fully understood. The most intimate and lethal weapon of the kunoichi wasn't a poisoned needle, or a bladed fan, or even her ability to disappear into the shadows. Her most powerful weapon was perception. Specifically, the perception that feudal Japanese society had of women. Imagine the context. Samurai-era Japan was one of the most rigidly patriarchal societies in history. Women were considered property. They were expected to be docile, submissive, obedient. They were seen as emotional, irrational, and, crucially, intellectually inferior. They were, in a word, underestimated. And that underestimation, that arrogant blindness of the patriarchy, that was her superpower. The kunoichi didn't fight the system. They hacked it. They turned every prejudice, every sexist stereotype into a tool of war. Think about it on 3 levels. First, the cloak of weakness. A samurai was trained to spot threats from other men. He saw a rival, and his hand went to his katana. But a servant girl who trips and spills the sake, a geisha who laughs nervously, they weren't a threat. They were invisible. The kunoichi used the expectation of female weakness as the perfect camouflage. While the samurai felt superior and protective, she was analyzing his movements, counting his guards, memorizing the castle layout. Second, the intimacy offensive. This is where seduction comes in, but not like in the movies. It wasn't about lust. It was about access. A gate guard would never tell a stranger the patrol schedules. But to the pretty servant girl who brings him water and smiles at him, maybe. A warlord would never discuss his military plans in public. But in the privacy of his chambers, with a woman he considers a mere object of pleasure, a harmless confidant, that's where the most guarded secrets came to light. The kunoichi was trained in the art of conversation, the art of listening, the art of making a man feel like the center of the universe. She exploited his ego, his loneliness, his desire. Intimacy wasn't the goal. It was the world's most effective data extraction method. And third, gender psychology. The kunoichi was a consummate actress. She could be the shy maiden who needed protection, the passionate woman who lost her head over love, or the helpless victim who had suffered a great injustice. Each of these roles was a mask designed to provoke a specific reaction from her target. She could use tears to create a distraction, a jealous fit to sow discord among allies, or a confession of love to win unwavering loyalty. She took everything the system used to oppress women, their supposed fragility, their emotionality, their service role, and turned it into a psychological arsenal. It was the jujitsu of espionage warfare, using your opponent's own strength and arrogance against them. Let's put it into practice. Imagine a warlord, Oda Nobunaga, for example, a paranoid, brilliant man surrounded by enemies. How do you get his plans? You don't send a ninja to scale his walls. That's suicide. You send a kunoichi. Let's call her Kiku. Kiku doesn't arrive at night. She arrives in broad daylight, looking for work as a servant in the kitchen. She's young, efficient, and above all, incredibly discreet. For months, she is the perfect employee. She doesn't speak unless spoken to. She keeps her head down. She works tirelessly. She is invisible. But while she cleans the hallways, her ears are open. She learns who the trusted captains are, who has gambling debts, who holds a grudge against the Lord. While she serves tea at meetings, she memorizes the maps on the table. Her mind is a tape recorder. One day, she accidentally stumbles near Nobunaga. He, in a condescending gesture, helps her up. She, with a perfect blend of gratitude and shyness, thanks him in a way that makes him feel powerful, magnanimous. From that day on, he notices her. Little by little, Kiku earns his trust. Maybe she discovers he likes a particular type of incense and makes sure his rooms always smell that way. Maybe she learns he suffers from migraines and learns a massage technique that relieves them. It's not an obvious, vulgar seduction. It's a slow, methodical infiltration of his personal life. She becomes the one person who seems to understand him, who asks for nothing. And one night, after a military victory, while he's celebrating and his ego is sky high, Kiku is there. He, feeling invincible and confident, starts to talk. He tells her his next moves, his secret alliances, the weak point he's discovered in his rival's castle. And Kiku listens, nodding, smiling, asking just the right questions to keep him talking, feeling like a genius revealing his secrets to a harmless admirer. That night, Kiku gets the information. The next morning, she simply doesn't show up for work. She's gone, vanished without a trace. The silent servant no one will remember. Mission accomplished, and Nobunaga may never know that the fall of his empire began with a spilled cup of tea. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the power of the kunoichi. Not the force of a blow, but the subtlety of a perfect manipulation. Why does this figure fascinate us so much? Because at its core, the story of the kunoichi is the ultimate story of asymmetrical power. It's proof that you don't need to be the strongest to win. You need to be the smartest. They taught us that the most rigid systems have cracks, and that those cracks often take the shape of the prejudices of those in power. They taught us that information is the most valuable weapon, and that psychology can be more devastating than steel. Today, their tactics are still alive. Not in assassins with katanas, but in the social engineering hackers use to get passwords, in intelligence operations where agents use honey trapping to seduce diplomats and obtain state secrets, in the way propaganda and disinformation exploit our own perceptions and biases to manipulate us. The battlefield has changed. It's no longer wooden castles, it's server networks. But the fundamental weapon remains the same, understanding the human mind and using it as a master key. The kunoichi isn't a relic of the past. She's an archetype. She's the reminder that being underestimated might be the greatest strategic advantage you will ever have. It's the lesson that real power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers, and that whisper can bring down empires. So the next time you watch a ninja movie, smile, enjoy the show, but remember the truth. Remember the real kunoichi, the women who didn't need black suits because their disguise was society itself. The women whose most lethal weapon couldn't be seen because it was right in front of your eyes. Your own arrogance, your own prejudices. The weapon was you. What do you all think? What is the modern equivalent of a kunoichi? A hacker? A spy? A master of social media propaganda? Leave your opinion in the comments. And if this story blew your mind, hit that like button, subscribe, and get ready for the next myth we're going to shatter. Until next time, infiltrators.